Everyone thought it was going to be a clean break. A signature, a handshake, maybe a quiet ride home with two people who'd been trying for months to love a boy who hadn't smiled in years. But the pen sat untouched, and the boy who was supposed to be starting over looked like he was about to be buried. Grab your coffee and stay with me, because what happened next flipped that whole room upside down. Justin Porter sat on the floor, his back pressed against the wall, arms locked tight around his knees like he was holding himself still on purpose. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stared at the ground in front of him like everything that mattered was stuck inside that silence. No one dared say it out loud, but everyone was waiting. Waiting for the judge outside the room. Waiting for the boy to lift his head. Waiting for the moment this became official and his name changed forever. But Justin didn't lift his head. He didn't reach for the pen on the table or look at the folder with his future printed on it. Carolina Steinhoff stood across the room with her hands gripping each other so tight her knuckles had turned white. Her husband Francis stood beside her, jaw clenched, watching the boy like he was looking at someone he wasn't ready to lose. Hi, my amazing friends and family, welcome back to Vigilant Heart Tales. Before we jump deep into today's story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and countries. And don't forget to check out the other stories on the channel. Tomorrow I've got another crazy one coming that I know you'll enjoy. Alright, let's get into it. Mr. Vance, the caseworker, stood next to the table with a file in one hand and a fake smile that never quite reached his eyes. Everything's ready, he said like he'd practiced it 100 times. Just need his signature and we can proceed. Francis didn't speak. Carolina looked like she was holding back tears but refusing to show it. The officers at the door stood still, watching, listening, doing nothing. Justin still hadn't moved. Justin, Vance said again, trying to keep his tone light. You can come to the table now. This will all be done in a few minutes. The boy didn't answer. Didn't blink. Then, without looking up, he said it. I want Jimmy. Vance frowned. Sorry. Justin raised his head. His eyes were dry but heavy. I want to see Jimmy before I sign anything. Carolina turned to Francis, confused. Francis took a step forward but stopped himself. Vance gave a quick, uncomfortable laugh. That's not possible. Jimmy is, well, he's a working dog now. He's part of the K9 unit. He's my dog, Justin said. He's the only one I had before all this. I'm not signing anything unless I see him. Justin, Vance started, softening his voice. I know Jimmy meant a lot to you, but seeing him now might not help. He's trained. He has new handlers. This is a very sensitive time. He's asking to see the one thing from his life that still matters, Francis said, stepping in. Let him see the dog. This is highly irregular, Vance snapped. We've already taken up too much time today. We'll take more if we have to, Francis said firmly. He needs to see Jimmy. That's not negotiable. Vance looked over at the officers. One of them shifted but didn't speak. Then the second officer stepped forward. His name was Brandon Cray. I know Jimmy, he said. He's been on the force 5 years. Reliable. Never forgets a face. Name stuck with me when I read the Porter file. Justin looked at him, waiting. You were the kid from the fire, Brandon said. That dog wouldn't let anyone near him for days after we picked him up. He sat at the front door of the shelter like he was waiting for someone. He was waiting for me, Justin said. Bring him, Francis said. We're not moving forward until he sees the dog. You're making a mistake, Vance said sharply. You don't know what this could stir up. I know exactly what this could bring back, Brandon replied. Truth. Vance opened his mouth, but Brandon had already walked out the door. Nobody spoke after that. Carolina slowly knelt beside Justin, not too close, but close enough. He'll be here, she said quietly. Justin gave a slight nod. 10 minutes passed. Then the door opened again. Justin looked up. And Jimmy walked in. Older now. Bigger. But the second he saw Justin, the dog stopped in his tracks like he'd found the only thing that ever mattered. Justin stood without thinking. Jimmy moved first, but not with excitement, with a kind of relief that made the room feel smaller. They met in the center of the room. Justin dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around the dog's thick neck. His eyes shut tight. Jimmy pressed his nose into the boy's shoulder. The two of them didn't make a sound. Nobody in the room moved. Francis turned away, wiping his face. Carolina looked down and finally let the tears fall. Even the officers stared like they didn't know what they were witnessing. Then Jimmy shifted. Slowly, his head lifted over Justin's shoulder. His eyes scanned the room. Then they landed on Vance. His body stiffened. His ears twitched. He stepped in front of Justin and stayed there. "What's going on?" Vance said, backing up a little. "That dog's trained," Brandon said. "He doesn't react like this unless he smells something. Something familiar. Something from a scene." "You're reaching," Vance said. But his voice cracked. Jimmy growled, low and steady, not loud, not wild, just a warning. "He knows you," Brandon said, stepping forward. "You were there that night, before the first unit arrived. The report said the social worker showed up late. But you were already on scene, weren't you?" "You're out of line," Vance said, now visibly sweating. Jimmy moved again, closer, his body locked between Justin and the man at the table. "You handled his case for 5 years," Brandon said. "You blocked 3 adoptions. You stayed close. Why?" "Enough," Vance said. But his hand was shaking now. Jimmy turned his head suddenly. He lunged, not toward Vance, but toward the briefcase. His teeth caught the handle, tore it open. Papers spilled everywhere. A small velvet pouch fell out. Brandon picked it up, opened it. Inside was a silver locket. "This was listed as stolen from the Porter home," Brandon said. "His mother wore it every day." Justin looked at the locket. His face changed. He nodded slowly. "That's hers." Francis stepped forward. "You kept evidence from the scene. You kept this boy in the system to keep him quiet." Vance backed up, but the damage was done. Jimmy stood guard. Justin stood still. And the truth finally had a voice. Jimmy didn't move from his spot in front of Justin. He stayed locked in place, tail low, body solid, eyes fixed on Vance like nothing else in the room mattered. Brandon didn't look away either. He held the locket up again, not to be dramatic, just to be clear. This was supposed to be gone. It was listed in the case report, tagged as stolen. And now it's in your briefcase, buried in the lining, next to paperwork that doesn't match. Vance's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Carolina stepped closer to Justin without hesitation now. She rested her hand on his shoulder and he didn't pull away. "You've been following this case for 5 years, Brandon said, voice lower now. "Blocking adoptions, showing up just in time to keep him floating between homes. But why keep him in the system? Why keep him close?" "This is insane," Vance said, backing toward the wall. "I've done everything by the book." "You were at the scene," Brandon said, "before the patrol got there. You said you arrived after, but you smelled of smoke. That was in the notes. Cigars. And the witness who was supposed to testify disappeared before giving their statement." Jimmy stepped again, a small movement, just enough to make Vance stumble sideways. "You saw what you weren't supposed to see," Brandon continued. "Or maybe you took what you weren't supposed to take. Either way, you got away with it. Until now." Vance looked around the room, but no one was on his side anymore. Not the officers, not the judge, not the family standing behind the boy who finally had a voice. "I want him cuffed," Brandon said. The second officer moved without a word. Vance didn't resist. He couldn't. He just stood there with shaking hands and a look that said he finally understood what justice felt like when it turned back around. As the cuffs locked in place, Justin looked up at Brandon. "He was in our house, wasn't he?" Brandon looked at the boy, steady. "Yeah, he was." Justin looked down at Jimmy and ran his hand over the dog's back. I knew I saw someone. But nobody believed me. You weren't wrong, Brandon said. You were a kid in shock. They should have listened. Justin didn't speak. He just leaned forward and hugged Jimmy again, face pressed against the dog's side. Francis walked over and crouched next to him. You don't have to carry this anymore, he said. Not alone. Carolina came too. She knelt beside them and reached for Justin's hand. This time he gave it to her. The officers led Vance out. The door shut behind them without a word. The judge, who had waited outside for most of it, finally stepped into the room. He looked around at the scattered papers, the torn briefcase, the boy on the floor with his dog, the couple who wouldn't leave him. I've seen a lot of cases, the judge said quietly. But this one's different. No one replied. There was nothing to say. He stepped closer to the table and pointed to the folder still waiting open. If the adoption still stands, and the boy is willing, I can finalize it now. Francis looked at Justin. It's your call, son. Justin stood slowly. He wiped his face on his sleeve, then looked at the judge. I want it. The judge nodded. Then sign your name, and it's done. Justin picked up the pen. The same one that had sat ignored for almost an hour. This time he didn't hesitate. He signed it. Carefully. Letter by letter. And when he put the pen down, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. Done. Carolina exhaled and pressed her hands to her chest. Francis smiled and touched Justin's back gently. That's it, the judge said. You're not a case anymore. You're family. Brandon came over as they packed up. You know, he said, kneeling beside Jimmy, he's due for retirement. He's been in service 5 years. That's usually when we let them rest. He doesn't need to go back? Justin asked. No, Brandon said. He needs a home. And someone he already trusts. Can I keep him? If you'll take care of him, he's yours. Justin didn't even answer. He just held the leash tighter, like he was afraid someone might change their mind. I've never seen him like that, Brandon added. He's worked narcotics, tracked criminals, seen things no dog should ever see. But he never looked at anyone the way he looked at you. Carolina leaned closer. You were never crazy for holding on to that memory. He was holding on too. Francis opened the back door of the car. Justin climbed in with Jimmy close behind him. The dog didn't bark or whine or shift. He just lay down across Justin's feet like nothing was wrong in the world. Carolina got in beside them. Francis started the engine. Before they drove off, Brandon tapped the window one last time. Justin rolled it down. You did good, Brandon said. You brought the truth back. Justin looked up at him. I didn't do anything. Jimmy did. Maybe, Brandon said. But you didn't let him go. That counts for something. Justin didn't know what to say, so he just nodded once. Brandon stepped back and watched as the car pulled away. Justin leaned his head against the window, hand resting on Jimmy's back. The dog stayed there, eyes half closed but alert. It didn't matter where they were going now. The people beside him weren't temporary. The seat he sat in wasn't borrowed. And the dog next to him wasn't a dream from the past. He had a family. He had his truth. And he had his dog. Everything had changed. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.